Okay, last video of the lesson, we are going to talk about something called a mid-segment. A mid-segment is part of a trapezoid, sometimes. So the theorem, the mid-segment theorem, states in a trapezoid, the segment containing the midpoints of the two legs is parallel to the bases, and its length is half the sum of the lengths of the bases. Okay, that was kind of wordy, so let's take a look at what we have. So here's our trapezoid. You've got parallel bases, right? So if you have a midpoint on one leg, so we can see that x is a midpoint because bx is congruent to ax, so that makes x the midpoint. Over here, y is the midpoint because cy is congruent to dy, and the segment connecting this midpoint to this midpoint will also be parallel to the bases, and then the length of this segment right here is going to be equal to half of the top base plus the bottom base. So let's write that out. When you are connecting your two midpoints, okay, so if you have this situation happening, then that means that that mid-segment xy is parallel to the top base BC and is also parallel to the bottom base AD. And it also means that XY, the mid segment, is equal to half of, so 1/2 times, the sum of the two bases. So the top base BC plus the bottom base AD. So that's your mid segment theorem. So let's put that into practice. Example 5, we're going to apply that mid-segment theorem. So part A, given that E and F are midpoints on trapezoid ABCD. So we have a trapezoid. We're told we have midpoints. So if E is a midpoint, that makes AE congruent to CE. If F is a midpoint, that makes BF congruent to DF. So I'm going to mark what we know when we have those midpoints right there. Because we have a line connecting your midpoints of your legs, that makes this the mid-segment. We know that it's going to be parallel to the bases and the bases are already parallel to each other in a trapezoid. Find the length of EF. So the mid-segment, EF, is equal to half of the sum of the bases. So half of AB plus CD. So let's plug in what we know. EF is 22 centimeters long. CD is 10 centimeters long. So EF is equal to half of 22 plus 10 is 32, and half of 32 gets us 16. So EF is equal to 16 centimeters. All right, so one last example, part B. So we're given E and F are midpoints on the trapezoid again. So if these are midpoints, if F is a midpoint, we've got those two congruent sides. If E is a midpoint, we have these two congruent sides. So this is a trapezoid that's been turned on its side, so it might look a little bit different. The bases are, I'm going to go ahead and mark the bases parallel. DC and BA are bases, and because E and F are midpoints, that makes segment EF the mid-segment, so it is parallel to your two bases. So find the length of CD. The difference on this problem is, well, one, our trapezoid is on its side, and two, we're asked to find one of the bases versus the mid-segment. So we are going to still follow our formula. We know that the mid-segment EF is equal to half of the sum of the bases, so CD plus AB. And let's plug in what we know and solve for what we're missing. Do we know how long segment EF is? We look at the picture. Here's EF. That's 11 centimeters, so we're going to replace that with 11 times half of, do we know what CD is? That's what we don't know. That's actually what they're asking us to find. So we're just going to leave that segment CD plus segment AB right here, we've got 17 centimeters. And we're going to solve this equation for CD, for our unknown side. All right, so my preference here is to take care of this 1/2 first. I know that what would make a 1/2 cancel away is to multiply this side by a 2. 2 times a half is 1, which means I have to multiply this side of the equation by a 2. When we multiply those 2's, we get 22 is equal to 2 times a half is 1, so it cancels. And then we can just carry down CD plus 17. And now let's solve for CD. We'll subtract 17 from both sides. So segment CD is equal to 22 minus 17, which is 5. And our unit length is centimeters. And we can just do a quick visual check to make sure that makes sense. You know, we got 5 centimeters for segment CD, which is shorter than 17, and it's shorter than the mid-segment 11. And that's accurate. If we got something bigger than the mid-segment, and this base is bigger than the mid-segment, then we would have made a mistake somewhere. So the length of the mid-segment is somewhere in between the lengths of your 2 bases. So you can just kind of do a quick little visual check on those to make sure your answer makes sense.